Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Midwest University, the speaker series. And my name is Donya Tabor Hanson, and my specialty is Revit content. I'm a senior Revit content specialist for Trimark USA, which is a company working with kitchen design, and we also sell the equipment and everything too. So my interest has always been in the Revit families. So creating your own Revit family template is something that I think can save you a lot of time. If you are creating content, if you have your own templates, to have everything set up for you as much as possible to begin with. You don't want to set up everything, but we do want to set up some bones of a template. And it seems like no matter where I've worked, I've always gone back to working with families because I just think they're the most interesting thing about Revit. So let's get into it. You want to choose wisely for starting templates. So let's break down the Revit families. This is a nice little breakdown that I've used for years. The Revit elements, they can be model elements, datum elements, or view specific elements. The model elements can either be host and those are generally going to be your system families, which you don't create templates for. Your walls, floors, things like that. You duplicate and go from there. Your model components are the ones that would have a family that is loadable. And that's the type of families we're talking about here, somewhat. Your datum elements are going to be your grids, your levels, your reference planes. You do have some loadable families for those in as much as the annotation part of them and the way they look. You can make changes in those, but generally you're not going to be doing a lot of those, so you don't need a template to keep doing them over and over and over. And then there are view specific elements, your tags, some of your symbols, anything that can be loaded, detail families. You might want to set up a detail. If you do a lot of details, you may want to set up a detail family template. The ones we're mostly going to be talking about are going to be model components. So that's where we're going to start looking at things. With a variety of templates to choose from, where do you start? You find something that's the closest match, and this is a list of all the templates that are in the English Imperial. I didn't look into the annotation, conceptual style, and title blocks, but you find one that's close enough to what you want, and be sure to look at and make sure it says if it's going to be based. Like here, we've got some face-based, floor-based, line-based, pattern-based, roof-based. If you want a base family, you want to pick something like that so that it can be hosted. But you also want to make sure that if you're going to be doing a hosted family, you want to make sure that the host is going to be available to you. Like if you're doing something that's wall hosted, do you have access to the walls? Do you build the walls? Or in my case, I reference in walls. So I may not want to do a wall hosted family because if the architect deletes that wall and puts another one back in same place, then my host is gone. So I may have to be careful. So that's things you want to think about when you're planning your template. So hosted families are very limited for that. So make sure that you're going to, if it's going to be hosted by objects levels, they're restricted. Just make sure that you can have access to them. Like I said, will the host be in the model or will it be referenced in? Does the family need to be a certain category, such as lighting? Is this something you're going to have to deal with? If the family does not sit on the level, we're using the offset suffice. Can we just do offset to get to that height that you need to be? Like maybe we want to put something at a certain height, a shelf at a certain height off the wall or something. Do we use the offset for it? Now, the next thing you want to start looking at. So we decide what type of family we're going to build. And I'm going to build one here, a template here in just a little bit. But I also want to make sure that you understand, do you know your users? Do they know how to manipulate families without opening up a family, deleting parameters and such? I've had people do that. And do you, these guys that do that sort of, yeah, they're the home wreckers. You know who they are. Some of you out there would definitely be a home wrecker, I'm sure. And maybe that's why you're here, to learn how to do it better. So know your users. You also need to know your project types. For example, where I work, when we do the kitchens, our projects are all in fractional inches because all of our equipment comes in inches. You order a 36-inch stove, a 62 or 60-inch table, or a 72-inch table. Everything comes in inches in our world. So we use inches all the time. So know your project types, know your views, and your template, your view templates. Do you do certain things with parameters to set parameters so that things show up differently in different views? For example, in our working views, we have all of our electrical, anything that has electrical will turn a green color in our working view. When we go to print, it goes back to black. Anything with plumbing shows up with a pink color. And if it's got a mixture of utilities, maybe it's got gas and electric, well, that's a plumbing and electric. Well, it will turn brown if it's got multiple options. So then when we're in our electrical view, to put our electrical outlets and stuff in, we have it so that we have a parameter set that will make sure that all those stand out. Everything that has that parameter set to a certain value. So we call it this the TM utilities, dry mark utilities parameter. And if it's set to a 2, then it shows up highlighted in the electrical plan to make sure that you put your electrical outlets with it. And then you set yourself from your working to your print and it goes back to black there. We do the same thing with the plumbing. So it's in our working views, we have these colors that show up based on view templates and filters that don't show up when we're in print. So that's some of the things you need to work for. If you're going to have something like that, you got to make sure those parameters are built into your template. And make sure you know your tags and your schedules. You want to make sure if you're building something, you want to make sure that if it's going to have to go into a schedule, make sure that those parameters get put into there for it. And you got to know your family rules. And I don't mean like just keeping your feet off the couch. I mean, you know the way the families work. For example, here's an example of family rules: generic versus plumbing or specialty equipment. I've got 2 families in here. One of them I've put the category in here so you can see that it was a generic model, and one's a specialty equipment. One is a dish table soiled, and one is a clean dish table, and one's L-shaped. So the L-shape is specialty equipment. And when I put a section mark through here, it will cut through the generic model. It will not cut through the specialty equipment. It does not show up as being something to be cut through. So let's just go look at that, because these family rules are really important. So here I've got that. And if I want to bring up this section, and the easiest thing would be to window tile this together. So if I take this section here and it's cutting through the bowl sink on this soiled dish table, but since it's facing this way and it doesn't cut the specialty equipment, it's as if I'm looking from the back side of it. So it shows the view in that direction, the entire view. And you can see let me just grab this little off the table, off the section. If I move this section up, you can see how it still remains the same on the specialty equipment, but it's cutting the generic model. If I flip it around the other way, it doesn't cut through. Now I can make it just look at part of it by pulling the cut plane back. But if it's entirely enclosed in the cut plane, even if I move this down, you can see where it's cutting through the generic model over here. But if I continue to move it down through there, I still see as if I'm seeing the outside of this. So you got to know your family rules when you're working with these. All right, now. So be sure to choose your category as what you need and how you're going to work with it. Each template also has its own object styles. Each generic specialty have their own. So your specialty equipment has hidden lines. And then if I go to the generic model, also has hidden lines. But these things will quickly fill up your object styles inside your projects. If those object styles that fill up your visibility graphics, if by developing your own template, you can keep it where you can have those things built in, and it helps you control the names of these. because if you look here at the top of this one, I just randomly picked the project and pulled this out. Here I have clearance code, mandatory, and then mandatory. And then I've got clearances. I got clearance, and then I got clearances, and then I have QF clearances, and I have these other clearances. And a lot of times we get equipment from somewhere else, so we don't always control what comes in. So I have to deal with this sometimes. Generally, we'll clean up a family and put them to what our clearances will be. And then we can try to limit some of this down. But you can see with, here's just two, that's just a typo. And by putting it in your template, you're going to have more control of this and less likely to have typos going on. You don't get so many multiples in there. So let's create a family template. We're going to start with my plan. My plan is going to be, I want to create a plumbing fixture. So for this type, I need plumbing, but I want it to be floor-based. So I need it to connect to the floor, or at least, be able to sit on the floor. The materials will need to match our object styles, and our need to match, and our object styles also to match. My project units, I will be setting them to match my projects. So that's what I mean. Well, you got to know these things you're going to go through. You got to know what you got to have here. And I will need all the parameters for the schedule. So you make a plan, and then you're going to have to work the plan. And when I talk about the parameters, I need to know if I'm putting in electrical or plumbing or mechanical. And I also need to know my identity data, what we're going to use, like my TM utilities that I talked about earlier. So I want to make sure that I go in there and get the ones that I need for this plumbing fixture that I'm going to create. So to start with, I'm going to start by picking a template, picking a starting template. And there's no floor-based plumbing one. Plumbing fixture wall-based, no floor-based. But I can choose the generic model floor-based if I want. So let's start with that. And then we're going to show you how to make it your own. So let me just go over to Revit. And no, I don't want to say that. Themes, go away. So I'm going to go with a new family. And I want to go with the Imperial Library. Oh, give me a break. Well, where was I before when I found those? This only happens if you're doing something live, doesn't it? Templates.
Someone chimed in and said Revit 22 libraries have been moved to the Autodesk cloud. Try Revit 2019 in the folder structure.
Thank you, somebody who's saving myself here.
That was Greg Price.
Hey, thanks, Greg. So I needed to go to Autodesk, Revit. Family templates, English. I must have done that screen capture from 19. All right, let's go with a generic. Thank you again. I want to go with generic. model floor based. All right. When I come in here and see these with the floor base and stuff, the bases in there, they're so thick. And I'm like, really? I don't need that to be thick unless I'm going to be sending something that's really thick. So I'd like to get rid of them. I can't. I got to deal with it. So when I'm working on floor base, this is what I've got. You have 2 reference planes. In all families, you have 2 reference planes. You have your center left, right, and you have your center front back. They are both pinned. They both define origin. When you talk about these reference planes, and we're going to talk about these a lot here soon, when you define the reference planes and you have them define origin, that's your insertion point. And you can change this to another one if you want to. But to get this to be a plumbing fixture, which is where we wanted to go, all I have to do is come up here to family category, change my generic model to a plumbing fixture. And by doing that, I now have a plumbing fixture floor-based family to start with. So when you look at those templates and what you can work from, then you want to pick the one that's closest, but realize you're not limited to everything being a generic model, which some people have found that that's just, they just put everything generic. Well, that's what it started with. Well, you can change it to set it for what you want. So I am going to shut down this. No. And let me open up one of my templates that I have started. I'm going to start a family with a template that I've started, because you cannot start with just family with, let me go ahead and get a family with just plumbing. So when you get your family started and you save it, you're going to have, it's going to be an RFA, a Revit family. We'll talk about how we make it to an RFT in just a little bit. When you get started with it, and you got everything going the way you want, as far as your plumbing fixture, whatever, you're going to have your center front back, and you're going to have your center left right. But I have moved it so that my back is pinned down, and my back is defines origin. There's a trick to getting that way. And that is, it always comes with this one that's going to be pinned down. So I went in and changed my center front back. I changed it to back. Sounds like I'm cheating, but that's one way to get it so that I don't have this one that is always unpinned. You don't want to see, because somebody's going, oh my gosh, I must have unpinned it. Now pin it back. So if you want to have your insertion point be something other than your center front back or center left right, then go ahead and change it to change that reference plane. This one used to be the center front back. I changed it to back. And with it being that one, then I can leave it pinned, and I don't have this one being unpinned. And once I renamed this one to back and I set it to back, then I created another reference plane, and I just pulled this down and said that. And when you do that, I can go in here and I can just Control A, Control C, come up here and paste, and I can paste it in. So I still have the center front back without actually having the unpinned mark. That's just a little finesse when it comes to having your Revit families set up so that people don't think they accidentally did something. Okay, so after choosing a template, you're going to start with your basic, your common attributes for your family style for this template. You're going to want to look at your project units. That's what we're going to start looking at in here. Minimal dimensions for settings for typical families. Now, if you do furniture and you do tables all the time, you may want to have your external dimensions, and then you want to have maybe reference planes for where the legs would go, and you want to have a height and maybe a thickness for your family, for the tabletop thickness or the top of your legs or whatever. But you want to plan these out. You don't want to do too much. So I'm just going to go with a minimal of height, width, and depth. And do us all a favor, do not make one of your dimensions, like width is commonly referred to as length. Well, guess what? They're all lengths right then. Height is a length parameter. Depth is a length parameter. So make it width, depth, and height, not length, depth, and height. That can get a little confusing when you're using the word length because they're all lengths. You also want to check on your object styles and the type of things that you want to get started with. Your object styles would be something you want to look at. So you don't have all those different spellings of things in there. And you want to bring in your materials. And then you want to do your shared parameters. Let's talk just a minute, just between us. Are you allowed to edit your shared parameter file? Or is it something that is locked down? Our company has it where, at least in the southern region, we don't edit our shared parameter file. The shared parameter file has been set, and we use the same one that had been used for, last time it was edited, I think was 7 years ago. But now I know, as the keeper of the shared parameter file, that people are going to want to have some shared parameters. They're going to need custom ones. We have customers that require different things in their schedules, and we need to have another text parameter or another length parameter or another yes/no parameter. So give yourself some leeway when you have that shared parameter option. Set yourself up with some extra parameters for people to play with. They can hijack. I call them the hijack parameters. I hijack them. Let's go over and look at my shared parameter file. When I go to manage, share parameters, I've had to get off of the server, so I need to go and browse to where I've got my share parameter file right there. So all these are typical. We have some in the identity data that were edited a long time ago. There's my TM utilities that I use to help put things, either use filters to change them different colors, put them in different schedules and such. But when I talk about the ones that we hijack, we call ours the XYZ parameters. Why XYZ? It shows up at the bottom of the list. So somebody needs to know what they're doing with our parameter file to even find these down there. And we made 10. Well, the first time we did them, I said, well, just give me 4. Who was in charge of the person in charge of the shared parameter file at that point gave me 4 of each. It took me about 9 months. I said, just give me 10. I need more. So we have 10 of each of area, integer, length, number, text, volume, yes, no, parameters. And so far we've been able to utilize them for everything that we need when it comes to some customers needing extra things in their schedules and such. We have a landing page for all of our projects, the homepage, and we have a place for notes. So in those notes, it would say using text through parameter for extra plumbing remarks for something like that. You always put a note in there as to what it's used for. But give yourself a little bit of elbow room for those people that are building families, and teach them to use these parameters instead of editing shared parameter files. So that's a big one as to whether or not you're going to use the shared parameter files, if you're going to edit them or not. Just make sure if you get in there that you have permission to edit the shared parameter file and that you know what you're doing with it. Never open and edit the text file, always edit it through the dialog box. And most of these things that you're going to be doing right here are all in the Manage tab. So when I'm working in Revit Families, I live on the Manage tab. So I would start here and go to Project Units and make sure that my project units for my length is set to fractional inches for me. And then you can set your distance here. You may also want to look into these parameters. And if I'm working with piping, maybe you want to make sure my pipe size are set down to at least an 8 so that I can set those up for whatever size pipe I need. You may want to look at your electrical. If you're going to be doing something with electrical, do you need to have something in here to display a certain way, or to a certain, conduit sizes are going to be in inches? Yeah, you may want to look at all of these things in here. And a lot of times people got as far as this and never went any further. And I think if you set your length here, then why is my pipe size not showing up right? I've got it set to, fractional inches to the 32nd, but my pipes only show up at ½ inch. Well, that's under piping. So make sure that you explore all of these things here. So back up here, you want to check your object styles. This has my object styles in here, but let's say, for instance, I didn't have my object styles in here. I always check, make sure there's nothing imported in there. And I've got materials in here already, but if I was starting from scratch, I wouldn't have materials in here. So let me go ahead and just delete a few of these out. Yeah, that works. So if you're building it and you don't have the materials in there, one of the things I have found is having a file that is a depository for things makes it easy for me to go in and say, give me, let me get my views to a list so I can see what I want. Give me my materials. I don't think I have a 2022. I'll go to 2020. And I can see some things in here. So I have a file that has my materials in here. Let me go ahead and put it to a shade, consistent colors board. And some of these also have a subcategory built onto them. In this file also, I have my object styles. So if you keep these handy, this also helps if you have to get, if I get a family from somewhere else and I want to put my clearances on there instead of theirs, I can use this to transfer project standards to get my clearances over to that. So where I don't have these things in here to begin with, I can open up this file and say, transfer project standards. From there, bring me over my materials and my object styles. And now, here they are, back again. I have my materials and my object styles because of having them in here. You don't see the object styles here, but you do see them when you hit this view. These are my lines that maintain my object styles. So having that means that I can always guarantee that I will have my object styles set up so they always come in with the same name. And I have my materials always set up so they always come in with the same subcategories, even if necessary. So that way I can bring things in. So I've set up my project units. I've transferred some project standards even. I'm going to be looking at shared parameters, but I'm going to show you a neat trick with that one. I've got my object styles and my materials in. Okay. Now to get my parameters in, I'm going to take you off track here. And I'm going to tell you how I get my parameters in, because let's see, do I have it here? No, I'm going to go, yeah, let's go ahead and look at this. Yeah, it keeps the family to steal from. I keep a project to steal from. Somebody deletes a schedule or something? No, transfer project standards or insert views from a project. Oh yeah, it's nice to have something to steal from. So I got my object styles and my materials. Now we want to add reference planes and dimensions. Well, I've already done that over here. So I've got my reference planes in, and I have my basic dimensions in here. So a reference plane is something that you will want to keep it where you can. Let's get back to there. Your reference planes, you want to keep it going in the same direction. Reference planes they have a front and a back. And when you draw a reference plane, you want to draw around the center of the object in a counterclockwise motion. You can always tell which direction is the front and which direction is the back of a reference plane. The name of it shows up on the back. And so I can look here, and this one was drawn from this direction up. This one was drawn from this direction down. You can reverse it. If I pull this up, then I put it the front side on there. So it does matter which way you are drawing your reference plane, but yeah, you can reverse it if you want to, if you need to. But they do have a positive and a negative side. When you go into an elevation, though, all reference planes, positive is up and negative is down. And it can make a difference on the way things is. And you want to name your reference planes. Name all of them. If it's inside, if it's left leg, right leg, front legs, back legs, handle height, anything that you have a reference plane for, you need to name it, because you're not the only one that's ever going to open this up and look at it. And it also makes it easier for people that come along behind you to see what's going on. And it'll just make it easy for you when you have to go debug the family because somebody found something that didn't work in it, for example. So name your reference planes. Please name all your reference planes. And then you put your parameters on for your minimal. So I put on my width, depth, and height is the only parameters I have in there for my minimal dimensions. And then you want to add your shared parameters. When I'm looking at shared parameters, I have some Dynamo that I use. And the Dynamo that I found that works well, I mean, you can go in there, everybody should be able to add parameters. Let me just look at that and then we'll look at the Dynamo. But if I go in here, and this one being plumbing, it would have had all the plumbing things in here. But if I look at some of these things and say, well, I really don't need these, I could, get rid of this because that's got all the plumbing in it. Maybe I wanted only hot and cold water. If give me new family, new family, and bring in this one has no parameters. And this is a basic one, has no plumbing or anything in there. Basically just, this is I use for nested components. But if I want to use it for plumbing and I want to get rid of this and I want to bring in my plumbing parameters, let's just say for hot and cold water, I've got Dynamo that I use, and I'm going to give you out the information on the Dynamos that I use. You'll want to write down Aussie BIM Guru, AUSSIE BIM Guru, and we're going to look up his stuff. And of course, it's not going to want to use it in here. And I am going to pop back over to version 19. I haven't tested it with it. I'm just going to back off and use the one I was using. When you're building families, you don't get to use the latest version of Revit. You always build to the lowest common denominator, what people are using. So I'm going to pop back over to release 19 and bring up my Dynamo because I know it works in that version and I should have done that to begin with. And the Dynamos that I use work from Excel files, and the Aussie BIM Guru teaches you these things. Here. If you go search for YouTube, Aussie BIM Guru, add parameters to families using Dynamo. And if I just take that right there, pop it in here, add families parameters. He's got a 2020 version of this. And then you can add share parameters to families using Dynamo based on this tutorial that he has. And then to follow that up, you can look up YouTube Aussie BIM Guru, set family parameters using Dynamo. And pop this one over here, Aussie BIM Guru. Add parameters. No, that's not what I wanted. I want the other one. Give me this. Copy. And paste. And you can set the parameters using Dynamo as formulas. So I've even got it where I can add my formulas to these. Those two will save a lot of time. And it also helps when I get families from other places, I can just quickly add my formulas and my parameters that we use, the custom ones that we use, to any family that I want real quick. So let's just take this little stool here. He's gonna be fun. And under the Manage tab, I said most of the time you're going to, when you're building families, you'll be on the Manage tab. So even my Dynamo is going to be in there. And the Aussie BIM Guru teaches you how to go and build your formula list through an Excel file. So all I got to do is call up the Excel file that has the things in it for each one. And I've got it broken down to the different sets of parameters that I use. If it's going to be hot, cold water, it's going to be indirect waste, if it's going to be electrical. So I go to my add parameter, Dynamo, that I built based on the Aussie BIM Guru. I can browse to find the Excel file. And this is not a whole lot of code, but I keep it right here because all I have to do is go browse. And if I want hot, cold water only, let's say it's hot, cold water and waste. I can do that. And then I can just run this and it's going to add the parameters that I need. And it's also going to add our custom parameters, my TM utilities and things like that we use. When that is done running, I go, I don't want to save the changes. And I've got two different versions of editing the parameters, one with electrical, one without the electrical, because it has some formulas in there that I use. And here is my TM utilities key. And this does several things, but if it has 0 is if it has no utilities. 1 of it has plumbing, PL. 2 of it has electrical. 3 of it has mechanical. 1 plus 2 equals plumbing plus electrical, just to remind people. If this one's just going to have plumbing, it would be a 1. And I run that. And my run is complete. No, I don't want to save changes. So now here I can look at this stool. And this stool has the cold water, the direct waste, the hot water, the indirect waste, the plumbing connections, plumbing remarks. And under my identity data, I have my item CFA for custom for anyone, or item number. This is a type number. This is an instant number. So if we're using a chain restaurant, then we use type. And then my TM utility setting to 1 is going to set it for the correct color. And the working view template is also going to make sure it goes to the correct plumbing schedule, not the electrical schedule. So if it's got both of them, it can be, if it's got a 12 in there, it can be in plumbing and electrical schedule. So this is how we add our parameters to something. So we have our custom parameters. If the parameter is already there, it just ignores it and goes on. So if the parameter had been there and been set, it would already be moving on to something else. So I hope that helps. I mean, by this time, most people can go in here and you can add a share parameter, search for the share parameter, etc. If you're putting in dimensions and such, those would be a family parameter, not a share parameter, unless it's something you have to schedule. If you're doing structural families and you want to schedule the length, I might have a share parameter that would be for just structural length. Something in there that would be like str_length or something that, something you want to use over and over again, but it's something that should be consistent in your company so that not everybody's adding different parameters and changing parameters, and you want to be consistent with it. If you have something, a share parameter to be, and it has to be scheduled if it's a share parameter. No, I did it backwards. It is to be scheduled. It has to be a share parameter. Share parameters are used for all your tags. So anything that has to be tagged or anything that shows up in a schedule has to be a shared parameter. That's why when you do your tag, you go through the shared parameter, pick the same name. It has the same GUID code as, and then the schedule does the same thing. So it has to look for the same exact thing. Just giving it the same name doesn't work. It has to have the exact same one from the exact same shared parameter file. Okay. So that's how I use my Dynamo. That's how I set up my parameters. It's the easiest thing I have done in years. And it makes it so I can go pick out the different ones. And I just have the Excel file set up for the different things that I would add in a grouping. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to save the template. Save as does not have a template as a setting on their file size or file type. So you're going to save it as an RFA. So save the family as an RFA, and then you're going to close the file. And then you're going to want to rename or copy the RFA to an RFT. Let me get this straight. From RFA to RFT for Revit Family Template. It will give you an error message. So you may be unusable. Well, we know it works. So go ahead and just rename it. And then the first thing you want to do is take a copy of that and put it somewhere else. Because if you're going to put this out for people to use, they can't open an RFT file, but you can go and say new and start with an RFT file. But I always keep a copy somewhere else just in case. Whenever you start something with an RFT file, your first thing you do is see you're in family 1. That's the name of the file that you're going to be in, or family 2, depending on how many you've had open. But you want to make sure you have a copy of it somewhere. And then you can share it with your coworkers. Okay. So now that you have your first custom template set up, you got to, let's talk about what you had to know. You had to know your projects, know what goes in them, know the view templates, etc. Know your tags, your schedules. You have to know these things. Know your view templates, know your users. For example, one thing that I do when I have something that they need to be able to turn things on or off, let's change from casters to legs. If you check casters, the casters show up. If you uncheck casters, legs will show up. Well, things that I want them to play with, change, use, whatever, I put them all under constraints and make them instant parameters so that when they pick on a family, put it in, that's the first thing they see in your properties. So my user's been taught to go there. If I put something under other, it's for somebody other than you, don't go there. I put it under other, possibly because if casters is turned on and it's an instant parameters, well, legs to turn off would have to be an instant parameter. But I don't want it up here where they can turn on both. So legs has a formula that says not casters. So legs is down here under others. They can't do anything with it because it's got a formula built into it. But know your users and to get them set up so they are used to things like that. Give them, if you're going to give them something that they can make a variety of things out of, then put it under your others. I mean, under your constraints or something at the top. And then you're ready to build your first family. So you got to know and know and know, and then you build and test. And when I mean test your first family, send it to the home wreckers. Send it to the one in the office that breaks everything. They are going to be your new ally on how did you get it where it's not usable? Did you miss something in your array, for example? Did you miss having a line show up when it wasn't supposed to or something? Did you miss something in your view? So send it to the home wrecker and ask them to test it for you. Okay, a few hints and hacks. Let me see, do we have any questions? I can't see the chat, so somebody's got my questions for me?
Yeah, we have one question
Okay.
from Tom Flaherty. He says, will you be sharing your Dynamo scripts?
Well, see, that's just it. My Dynamo scripts work with mine. I guess I could share the Dynamo scripts. If someone wants to send me an email, I didn't have anything with my email on it. I will have before I leave here. It's
I can put it in the chat for you.
Yay, put it in the chat. Send me an email if they want. I will send them the Dynamo if they want. Now my Excel files are only going to be for mine because they have to do with my shared parameters. But I would gladly send the Dynamos out. keep you from having to do that. But it's one of the ways that if you're trying to learn Dynamo, best thing to do is watch somebody like the Aussie Guru. He takes you through the steps. You also have to have certain packages downloaded, and he will tell you which packages they are. I am not the Dynamo person, but I can follow instructions, and he does a really good job. So however you want to do it, I can send them to you, but you need to check, make sure. I don't know what packages are in them, but you can check on his video and watch that, and he will tell you what packages. But yeah, I'll be glad to send them. But they go as they are, as is. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
And
I can somebody send me an email and I'll send it out, and my email is gonna be in the chat. So let's talk about reference planes within the area and how they're used. Reference planes with that front and back thing. No, I don't want to say that. Let me go down here, and I should have we go to open. And let me grab this one. Okay, here is a file. And one reason you want to have things on a reference plane, this is just a sweep. Okay. And this sweep is on a reference plane. Let's see, I'll pull this out. A reference plane back. I can come here and I can say, edit that reference plane. Because I name my reference planes, I can put it on the front. And it pops over there. You can see it's moved from the front. Maybe I want to just do a copy of it, paste it, align to the same place, and then say edit work plane and put that one on the back. It's a very good reason to name your reference planes right there. Being able to use your reference planes by name. Let's go to the right side here. I'm going to do an extrusion. I'm going to set my reference plane to be the back. To be the left. I'm in the right. Yeah, okay. And I'm just going to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to set it. Give me side depth. And it's going to be a type parameter. It's under dimensions. And I can come in here and say my side depth is going to be 2.5 inches. I can finish that extrusion. When I come in here to a front view, I should have a thickness over here. Come back over here. Look here. That. Turn it loose. Turn it loose. Yep. Okay, it's going to let me have it. So this thickness turned out to be 2.5 inches. I didn't have to have a reference plane here to lock it down to. Because I used my reference plane to start with, it starts at 0, and positive was to the inside. If I take this and say edit work plane and send it to the right side, the positive stayed. So it came to the inside on the right side because the reference plane have a front and back. So there's your little lesson on why the reference planes, having a name, are so useful. Do not open from a project. Don't open your families from a project to edit them again. Go ahead and open them from the way they begin with. Otherwise, there's going to be materials that come in that you don't need. Back over here to this. If I go to and where's the one that says, okay, here's from projects. This is a project that I started with my materials in it, but then I opened it from a project And I had the basic materials in here, but when I go to materials, I did not have default. Earth, yeah, I have not used earth a single family in my kitchens ever. Electrical zones, yeah, glass maybe. System zones, these are the materials I call the cling-ons. They just cling on when you open a family from inside a project. I don't need them. I don't need them cluttering up my project or cluttering up my family. So you always want to open your families from where they originated from. And that keeps your project's materials down too. And I've showed you examples of one of mine, and fix XREF pins. I mentioned that the reference plane pins where I swapped the back, made it back, and then created a new center front back. Add some parameters and set parameters. Aussie BIM Guru, I wanted to make sure I covered that. And that's the YouTube search. That's a great time for a screen capture right there. If you want to find out how, that's the searches I used. If you haven't, didn't get that written down or something, that's the searches I used. And when you search that, that's the YouTube channels I had there also. Are there any other questions?
No, ma'am. There was just a question about the Aussie BIM Guru, but
know,
you went
isn't
over
it
that
great?
again.
That's the best. That's the best thing I can tell you is talk to other people about how they're doing things and stuff. And when I have to go and do all those parameters all the time and make sure they're always exactly the same parameters and stuff, man, just having those two dynamos, or like I say, I have three because one sets some values in there for a formula. But just having those has made things so nice to have, and I can fly through families faster. Because I got to add electrical, there's about 15 different electrical parameters I have to add. I don't want to add those individually. Run the Dynamo. And I always give him credit for it. So yeah, he's got some other wonderful Dynamo examples and stuff as well. And with that, I can just thank you for your time. Thank you for taking time out with me. I hope you got something out of this. Please send me an email if you would like to have me send you anything, or if you have any other questions at any time. And catch me on the Autodesk Facebook page for the Revit group. I answer questions there once a month also. So thank you for your time, and enjoy your Midwest University speaker series. Join them again.